Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Brian Bushard, and we are talking about Eric Adams, New York City Mayor Eric Adams' plan, Brian, to deal with what's seen as a homeless crisis in New York. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so Eric Adams announced this plan on Tuesday, and what it does is it allows law enforcement and medical officials to round up people that they determine are mentally ill, and that's a determination that's been heavily criticized by a number of groups for several reasons. But first and foremost, it's been drawing comparisons to Rudy Giuliani, the former New York City mayor's broken windows policy of really just rounding up homeless people and putting them out of the public eye.
And let's remind people a bit. So, Rudy Giuliani, back when he was New York City mayor, the broken window theory really was about you address these so-called quality of life issues because that's what leads to, murder, rape, mayhem, et cetera, right? Is that the logic here of why Mayor Adams is doing this?
Not necessarily. I mean, so what Eric Adams is saying is that New York City has two issues that go hand in hand. One of them is a major homelessness issue, and the other is an issue around mental illness, which has been part of his platform when he was running for mayor, and something that he's really been addressing since he took office in January. What this does, though, is it allows officials to round up people on the streets and put them into hospitals for mental health treatment.
So how exactly is this law different than what's already on the books?
Right. So what's on the books is local officials can detain people who are determined to be a risk to themselves or to others. What this law does is it expands that, and it allows authorities to detain people who may be determined or seem to be unable to meet their own basic needs.
So if you're delusional, it's in a way it's kind of funny that, especially in New York City, if I was singing to myself and looked a bit, crazy in their minds, they could technically pick me up on that basis alone, right?
Exactly.
So Brian, obviously one of these part of this is rooted in economic issues and the fact that we've had a tough economy, strained mental health facilities. I mean, how are other cities dealing with this? There's certainly homeless populations across the country.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Gavin Newsom in California implemented a similar strategy earlier this year that allows law enforcement to detain people who might be determined to have schizophrenia based on a court order. And if those people if they opt to not choose medical treatment under that court order, they can be forcibly detained. So it's not a policy that's coming out of nowhere, but it is something that's been rooted in, or that has been heavily criticized.
When we talk about mental illness, we talk about it from a point of empathy. Law enforcement's really more about crime. Is this really in some ways a surrogate for cleaning up the streets and reducing crime?
Well, part of the criticism is that it has just been, or that it could be a policy meant to take these people and put them out of eyesight. Whether that's on crime or if it's just purely on aesthetic, Eric Adams did not specify that. What he's been saying is that he wants to address this issue of mental health, illness and homelessness.
And we've certainly heard about subway, I'm in New York City and, people being, whether it's pushed onto the subways, very rarely. It seems to be more in the news. I don't know if crime rates are actually going up, though. Is that been a big factor here?
Surprisingly, the number of homeless people in New York has actually been lower this year than it has in years past. It's at around 3,400 at the beginning of the year. At the start of 2020, before the pandemic, it was at 3,900. So it's not a drastic change, but homelessness in New York and crime in New York is nothing new. This is by far the most drastic measure.
One of the things that I saw was this sort of moral obligation was one of the quotes people had, where it's been framed as a sort of simple left-right issue. Yet there seems to be a lot of criticism. Where are the pockets of criticism here? It's not just, rights for the mentally ill or how you recognize mental illness. There are a lot of legal groups who, frankly, have said this could put New York City in at odds with the legal rights of citizens and leave it vulnerable to lawsuits. Is that correct?
Right. The former head of the New York Civil Liberties Union said that this is opening the door to a challenge. But in addition to that, it could also violate federal and state protections for homeless people. And like the criticisms that you mentioned at the top, homelessness groups and advocacy organizations have been criticizing this for really just being a more inhumane kind of practice that targets specific people who are down on their luck.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Brian.
Thank you.